Welcome back to the LFS podcast. Then we're going to move on from all of this weekend's Premier League chat before the final day of the season, and because it is the final weekend of the season, it's time for the team of the season and the season awards. Then I'm going to start with the season awards before I go to my team of the season, because the team of the season's the big talking point. But let's go to the season awards. So, similar to the LFS season awards, we have 7 categories: goalkeeper of the season, defender of the season, midfielder of the season, forward of the season, then player of the season, young player of the season, and manager of the season. That's the 7 categories. I've picked one person from each category. They can overlap. If they can, there is an overlap in one case between forward and player of the season, obviously. So let's have a look at them then. These are my season awards then. So my goalkeeper of the season is an interesting one. There was 2 picks here. It was between Alisson of Liverpool and David De Gea of Manchester United for me. We've had some good goalkeeper performances this season. You could say Edison at City, he's won the title. Arsenal's Aaron Ramsdale, he's done a big job for them this season. Nick Pope for Newcastle. David Raya for Brentford. Emi Martinez for Villa, who's of course won the World Cup as well. But I think in terms of the impact that they've had on their team, it had to be between Alisson and De Gea. And I picked Alisson for one reason and one reason only. Because he's had the most impact on his team. And he's been consistent the whole way throughout the season. One thing that's been lacking is David De Gea's made a few big mistakes this season. One that springs to mind is West Ham. The West Ham game. He lost in that game because he literally palmed it into his own net. And I can't think of one where Alisson's made a big mistake that has cost Liverpool a goal this season, or he's cost them a result in that form. So that's why I picked Alisson, because of the impact that he's had on Liverpool this season, because Liverpool have had a dreadful season in terms of injuries and consistency throughout the season, but he has been the one player that has been there throughout and has helped Liverpool multiple occasions getting a result more than anyone. I think one thing I could say is the best one-on-one goalkeeper in the Premier League, without doubt. You know, you look at his stats. I mean, he's saved, I think, an XG of plus 14 or something like that, much more than any other team or player in the league. And there's a goalkeeper. I think Liverpool would probably not even be thinking about European football if Alisson wasn't in that Liverpool team and he wasn't as consistent with his performances as he has been. He's the second most clean sheets, only behind David De Gea, with 14 clean sheets. And of course, as I said, he's the most consistent player in that Liverpool team. Moving on to defender then. Now this was a tricky one because they've not had many outstanding defenders this season in terms of someone that's put in an unbelievable season in terms of just being completely unbeatable. But Kieran Trippier has been one of those that could escape and could break into that category, because he's affected Newcastle not just in one position of defensively, but also in that fullback role of attacking as well. Set pieces. He's been a real threat for Newcastle, both defensively and offensively, and he's raised the bar. You know, I just picked up a few stats on him. He's got 1 goal, 7 assists, 14 clean sheets, 70% tackle rate at right back against crazy wingers. You know, you look at the wingers that the Premier League has, the likes of Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, Marcus Rashford, etc., etc. You could name a good number of players, but Kieran Trippier has been really, really impactful in that Newcastle side, not just as a defender, but also going forward for them. As I said, their set pieces and creating those chances and scoring big goals and creating big goals, of course, for Newcastle. I think he's been a real leader in that team, although he's not the captain, but he's been a real senior player that has led the team to their position. You know, getting top 4 this season, fantastic for Newcastle, a position that nobody could have dreamed of, and I think that's why he's got my defender of the season, because there's not been really. You look at it, it's been a Spurs season in terms of great defenders, and I think Kieran Trippier has really epitomised that role at right back this season. In terms of midfielder, there's only one. There's only one person that could win this for me. It's Martin Odegaard, because the impact, as I've made the point about impact twice already, but the impact he has had on that Arsenal team this season, as a player, as a creative force, as a captain, has been incredible. You know, he's led them in a title challenge all season. Yes, they've fell away in the last few weeks, but he's led them to that. Young player, Martin Odegaard, not old, not a senior Premier League player. You know, he's not one of the old boys. He's one of the new players. You know, get his stats up here. He's 24 years of age. Not a senior player at all in terms of Premier League. He's played, well, he's been a massive part of Arsenal this season, definitely. You know, he only joined Arsenal in 2021. So he's not been here a massive amount of time and led Arsenal on a title challenge. Yes, they're finishing second, and that's probably a disappointment for them, but he scored huge goals in key games. You know, the likes of the Newcastle game, he scored a huge goal there. He scored a huge goal in the Southampton game to save them a point, or to lead them to getting a point out of the game. He's been a huge player for them in the games where they've needed someone to step up, and he's certainly stepped up into that role. He's 15 goals this season from midfield. 15 goals, incredible for Martin Odegaard, and that's why he's my midfielder of the season, the most creative player in the Premier League. Kevin De Bruyne was close. Let's be honest. Kevin De Bruyne was very, very close, but for me, Martin Odegaard wins it. Just. Forward of the season and player of the season are the same for me. It's Erling Haaland, undoubtedly. You know, a sensation this season. Absolutely incredible. 50-something goals all season. 52, I think, goals all season. 36 Premier League goals this season. Incredible. You know, he broke the goal scoring record in a season this season. The previous record, I think, was 34. 32 in a 38 game season, but 34 overall. And he scored 36 in one season. In his debut season. Incredible. You know, 36 goals, 7 assists. He's getting assists as well. And also a 50% shot accuracy. And of course, in his debut season, he could win a historic treble. The Premier League, FA Cup, and the Champions League. He's already won the Premier League. He's 1/3 of the way there. And that would make him that would lift him even higher than he already is, if that's possible. That's why he's been forward of the season, because of the goals he scored and the impact he's had on Manchester City in another dynamic where they haven't played with an out-and-out number 9 since the Sergio Aguero left a few years ago, and he's completely reinvented the role and completely reinvented the way Manchester City play, and that's why he's forward of the season. He's had such a massive important role for Manchester City all season, and that's why he's player of the season as well, because his debut season, he's won the Premier League, he will get the Golden Boot on the final day. He will receive the Golden Boot trophy at the Brentford Stadium. You know, that's why he's player of the season. Incredible. In terms of young player, my young player of the season is Bukayo Saka. Now, some might be a bit confused by that, but I think Bukayo Saka has been another player that's stepped up this season. In terms of the way I said about Martin Odegaard and the Arsenal team, Bukayo Saka has also stepped up. You know, usually in a season he's there to score the odd goal or to make the odd run to set up a player, but he's been a real driving force for Arsenal in terms of their attack this season. He's been a player that's never wanted to give up, no matter what the scoreline, no matter what the result. He's always kept on, and a talent that, of course, he scored great goals, he set up great goals, he's been massively important for Arsenal offensively this season, undoubtedly. But the fact of, as I said about Alisson earlier, about consistency, Bukayo Saka's been consistent. He's played in all 37 matches for Arsenal this season in the league. All 37. The only player to do that. Now that's what you call incredible. You know, 37 games this season, and he's played, you can't remember when he's had a terrible game. You have 13 goals, 11 assists, incredible. He won the Player of the Month in March, and the phrase "bright spark" comes to mind. He's brought that energy to Arsenal when they haven't had it in certain games, and he's just burst them into life. You know, he scored the equalising goal against Southampton. He scored big goals, and he's been there in important moments for Arsenal. And for a young player, that's an amazing attribute to have for a team that wants to succeed and wants to do really well. And that's why he's my young player this season, because of how he stepped up, because of his age, how he stepped up and been there for Arsenal consistently throughout the season. And finally, in terms of manager of the season, my manager of the season is the Newcastle manager, Eddie Howe. Now, he's led Newcastle to a top 4 finish in his second season. Remember, last season they were in a relegation battle. He's led them to that, the top 4, Champions League football. Incredible. The first time in 20 years that Newcastle will play in the Champions League. They haven't spent outrageous amounts of money. Yes, they have a lot of money, and yes, they've spent a bit of money. But what Premier League club hasn't spent a bit of money? That's not the issue. But the fact that the players that were already there, players like Fabian Schär, Joe Willock, trying to think of other players, Joe Linton, Callum Wilson, Miguel Almiron, etc., etc. All those players that are already at Newcastle and weren't really performing that well under the previous managers, Eddie Howe's got something different out of them and brought them to another level that many would have said that's not possible. They're probably mid-table Premier League players at the best. They're not going to fight for Europe. They're not good enough to fight for Europe. But Eddie Howe has proven that a very well drilled side, good coaching, can certainly bring a player up another level, and they've certainly brought them up quite a few levels. He's got them in the Champions League, probably 2 or 3, maybe even 4 seasons ahead of schedule. Newcastle weren't thinking of Champions League football at the start of the season. They were probably thinking a solid mid-table finish, a good finish in the league, a few big results, maybe a cup run on the way. Of course, they got to a final, of course, in the League Cup final. That's massive too. That's why I think Eddie Howe's, been the manager of the season for me, because I love when a manager outperforms their expectations and completely breaks the barriers of the ceiling that Newcastle supposedly had at the start of the season of they're probably going to, they could, at the very best, fight for Europe, maybe get a Europa Conference League place if they're lucky. But the fact that he's pushed them well beyond that, defensively they've been incredible this season, the joint best defence in the league. The fact that they've got there is just sensational, and it's all down to not just the players and the money they've spent and the greatness of their players, but also the manager as well. Right, I'm just going to quickly wrap up team of the season because this has gone a lot longer than I expected it to. This is my team of the season. There's a few players in there that I had in the season awards, like of Alisson, Trippier, Odegaard, Haaland as well. But there's a few players that I haven't, and I'm going to pick 1 or 2 out just here as I can. I'm going to go through the Saliba and Salah then, because they would probably be interesting ones that some will pick up on. Saliba, I picked Saliba as one of the centre-backs for my team of the season, mainly because, again, as I said, outrunning expectations and completely unknown. I didn't know who William Saliba was at the start of the season, but somehow he worked his way into the Arsenal squad and probably became one of their best defenders this season. Arsenal, of course, then got injured, and that caused a lot of trouble at Arsenal at the back and how they were going to defend, because he was a big part of that all season. Was a massive part of how Arsenal defended this season and how they've led that title charge. But I think William Saliba has had a major impact on Arsenal defensively and has been their best defender. I would say that, from a point of no one knowing who he was or not thinking that he was capable of doing that at the very start of the season, and that's a massive achievement. So that's why he gets into my team of the season. And Mo Salah then, strange one, of course, as I said, Liverpool have had a terrible season, but I've put 2 of Liverpool players in my team of the season. The reason being is Mohamed Salah, again, incredibly consistent season, and it was between Salah, Saka and Rashford for the winger roles in this team of the season. It was 2 of 3. The reason I picked Salah more than Rashford is basically on stats. Salah scored more goals than Rashford. That's probably it. They both had a very good, well, their teams have had very different seasons. Manchester United had a very good season, getting top 4, winning a trophy and a final. Massive season under Eric Ten Hag and Liverpool have had a terrible season this season, but Mo Salah has been the benchmark. When someone says in recent seasons, wingers getting goals, who's been the benchmark? Mo Salah. And again, he's reached that benchmark. He's hit, I think, over 30 goals this season. In all competitions, he's one away from 20 Premier League goals. That's 19 Premier League goals this season for Mo Salah. In a season where they've just been not good enough, Liverpool. He's been leading that team in attack most weeks. Massive player for them, and I think that's why he just edges out Rashford. Rashford was injured, plus Manchester United haven't relied on him all season. He's been a big part of that team, but they haven't relied on him as much. And Liverpool have most definitely relied on Mo Salah a lot more than they probably would have wanted to with the players that they have, but certainly they have. And that's my team of the season as well. By the way, when this goes live at 5 o'clock this afternoon, the team of the season awards for the LFS will be picked up at 6 o'clock. So you will have 1 hour to vote if you're watching this as it goes live. 1 hour to get your votes in, and the votes will close. We will collect the results, and the results will be confirmed on Sunday's stream for the Premier League final day of our season awards as well, or your season awards as picked by you, the fans, the voters at home. Right, that is the LFS podcast this week on the final Premier League week of the season. Don't forget to follow us on social media as well, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok at LF Streams 2 on all of those platforms. And we will be back for another LFS podcast next week, but also a special show next week as well for the Premier League season review show. I'll be going through the overachievers, underachievers, the champions and the relegated all Monday at 5 o'clock. That will go live on LFS. So do join us for that on Monday. But for me, this afternoon on the LFS podcast, have a very good weekend and enjoy the rest of the season, what's left of it. See you next week.